Hello, hello, my friends. AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink. Welcome back to my face and my card making space and another STAMPtember video. For those that are new or not aware, STAMPtember is only during the month of September, and it is a big collection of crafty card making companies that sponsor Simon Says Stamp, and they produce limited edition exclusive stamp sets that are only available at Simon Says Stamp while supplies last. That said, I always link to the specific brand with all of the supplies in my description box below the video, because while the stamp set I'm showing will no longer be available if you're watching this in the future, etc., there are plenty to choose from, and all the brands have so many on offer, so many different great products. Today's video is for Paper Rose Studio, and they have lots. They have stamps and dies and some of their pattern papers. Beautiful pattern papers, so many things. Like just gorgeous products, loads of products. And as soon as you guys see the stamp set, which you probably already saw in the thumbnail, you guys know why I was like, large florals, really, you know, need I say more? But again, I'll have links to all the things in the description box below. I did some very simple watercoloring and splatter and bling, you know, watercolor, large florals, splatter and bling. That's all I need, and I'm good. So if you keep watching, I will show you guys how I made this card. And I started off with a piece of Distress Heavyweight White cardstock. And I pulled out Simon Says Stamp's oldie but goodie thank you text background stamp that I've used in a whole bunch of videos over the years. And I inked it up with Simon's Fossil ink, their original ink formula. This is a non-water reactive ink, so it's not going to smear with the things I stamp and watercolor on top of it. So I did that first, and then I put the panel into my MISTI, and I grabbed the floral cluster image from this Paper Rose Studio stamp set, and this is the Beautiful Friend stamp set, and I inked it up with VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink, just a good ink for watercoloring, etc. And I stamped it, I rotated the panel, stamped it again, and then decided the sides, I was like, they're a little bare, they need something. So I took the little individual leaf images in the set and just kind of stuck those on the sides, stamped those as well. And then I'm going to watercolor, and I'm just using my Mijello Mission Gold watercolor palette. You could use Distress inks, Distress Oxide inks, any sort of watercolors will work. I kept my coloring pretty simple. Right this moment, everything is in real time, but then I'm just going to speed it up with the magic of video editing. But I'm not doing anything fancy. I am just filling in, really. Not worried about light sources or shading or anything like that. Images like this are just my favorite because while they look overwhelming, especially if you haven't worked with large florals, anyone who knows me knows, I love me some large floral stamps. And once you start coloring them, they're not difficult. You know, once you add a bit of color to them, the image itself just kind of takes care of it. So that's what I did. I just picked a starting point, which I went with the little roses in these clusters, painted them pink, added some yellow to the other ones, and then I kind of just jump back and forth because that lets each little section dry a bit. So then I can go in with less water and more color and add a bit more depth. And so then I just keep doing that. So I did, you know, the yellows on the petals, and then I'd gone back and added a little bit more darker pink to the roses. Then I went on to the greenery. You know, I did all the similar shaped leaves in one color and then the other leaves in another shade of green. I don't have any shades to reference. I was pretty much just pulling whatever was on my palette and just swirling my brush in it and going with it. Not worried too much about it because, again, it's leaves and greenery and florals. Pretty much anything's going to work, in my opinion. So then I went back to the yellow flowers, and I added, I think, just a bit of orange just to, you know, deepen it up a little bit. Added that for those, and then browns, of course, for the centers. And because you let each section, as I'll call it, like dry, just like most things, they do dry back a bit. So, you know, it looks darker when it's wet. And then as it dries, it's like, okay, it lightened up a bit. Now I want to go in and add a little bit darker. So I did the same thing again with the roses. I went in and added a third little layer, just deepening them up a little bit. Deepened up the greenery with a bit more, again, just less water, more color. That's kind of the rule of thumb there. And yeah, I had fun with it. I didn't worry too much. I didn't worry if I went outside the lines or if I even filled in each area, you know, right up to the lines. Just letting it do its thing. Plus, I'm going to add splatter, and splatter fixes everything. Plus, I like splatter. So I went along and just kept adding, letting each little kind of area dry. And then when it was fully dry, I used some bundled sage distress ink. It's not a color I reach for very often. And then I always pleasantly surprise myself when I reach for random colors. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is a really nice color. Bundled sage being one of them. So I keep my little distress mini ink cubes. I have the Ranger blending foams. They fit perfectly in the bottom of the little mini ink cubes. So I keep one for each color. And so that's what I used for my blending. And I just blended this around the perimeter of this panel just to give it that little extra something. And as you can see, that fossil ink I used at the beginning to stamp that text background, it doesn't smear because it's not water reactive. So it just stays there and just gives it that extra something. So then splatter, as is tradition. I've got my splat box out and I have my Gansai Tambi Starry colors. I had added a few drops of water to the gold one. Mixed that up really well with my little fan brush and then splattered that gold all over this panel. And then I'm going to add more splatter. There's never too much, ever. I'm going to use my white gouache. So I just take my little palette and put a little bit of white gouache on there. Don't need much. And I've rinsed off my little fan brush and it's got a bit of water on there so it can water down the gouache a little bit so that it's easy to splatter. And the white gouache goes on much brighter, but as it dries, it kind of absorbs, the color beneath it. So it's much more subtle. So that's just something to keep in mind. And I'm okay with that because it just adds a little bits of texture and things like that. So I did all my splattering and then I pulled out Simon's Fancy Thanks wafer die, and I die cut it from a couple layers of scraps of white cardstock, and then the top layer was Simon's matte gold cardstock, and I adhered those together because, as Laura Basson says, dimension is life. And then for the inside of my card base is one of Simon's top folding A2 white note cards, and I'm going to stamp that thank you text background on the inside again with that fossil ink. And I'd put some post-it tape where the score line is so that I don't stamp past the score line on the inside of the card. And then I'm going to put this into my MISTI as well. And I'm going to stamp that floral cluster from the Beautiful Friends set. And that I'm going to stamp with that bundled sage ink. And when I stamp things like this on the insides of cards, it's with the intention of writing directly over it. Because I'm basically filling out the inside of this card. It's fine. A ballpoint pen, in most likely I would go with black, right over it. This is just extra, it just gives the inside of the card a little something something. So stamp that, flipped the card base around, stamped it a second time just to kind of mirror what the card front will look like. And then speaking of the card front, I put that in my MISTI, and there's sentiments in this set. And I took the My Friend sentiment and I lined it up where it's going to go underneath the die cut sentiment. And I don't have a problem doing this kind of stamping because it's like, if I mess it up, I'll stamp or heat emboss the sentiment, on a piece of cardstock, die cut it, can adhere it on top. So I'm not worried about it. But thankfully it's stamped good. I didn't, mess it up. But if I had, that's how I would have fixed it. So I got that stamped, and then I'm going to adhere the die cut sentiment right over it, and I'm going to pull out my T-square ruler to actually make sure I got the sentiment lined up properly, that it's straight, because you've got a few seconds of wiggle room before the craft tacky glue really takes hold. So I got that adhered into place, and then used the glue to adhere this panel to my card front. And this panel was A2 size, so I never trimmed it down, so it's going to completely cover this card base. So adhere that into place. And then I still haven't put away the Studio Cadia Golden Sparkle Crystals. They just live on my desk because I use them on everything. So poured some of those into my triangle tray, and then I just used the ones that I'd accidentally dumped on my work surface, whatever works. But yeah, still love my triangle trays. It makes life so much easier to funnel those right back into the container. So adhered a few of those little golden sparkle crystals to the card, and that finished it off. So like I mentioned in the intro, I will have links to the collaboration set. I'll have links to the Paper Rose Studio line and everything else I used and showed in my video today. That'll be in the description box directly below the video. So you can just click to expand the description box. All the links, link to my blog posts, social medias, etc., will be there for anyone who is interested. Thank you all so very much for taking the time to watch my videos, for thumbs upping, commenting, subscribe if you haven't. I'd love to have you, and I will see you all very soon in the next one. Bye.